Hey guys, it's getting pretty dark out here. Tonight's a full moon. There it is. I'm gonna wait till it gets a little bit darker, but I'm gonna show you how you can use a cheap DSLR, relatively cheap DSLR with a kit lens. In my case, it's a Nikon 5600 to shoot beautiful pictures of the moon. Stay tuned. While we're waiting for it to darken up, why don't we go over some of the settings that you'll want to use for a crisp shot of this full moon. Alright, first thing, and this is an absolute must, I don't care how still you think you are, you're gonna need a tripod. I'm just using this Joby, I forget what these are called, but they're basically like the little tripods with the bendy legs. I've just got it wrapped along the top of this fence, and that's gonna be sturdy enough for the shot. I've also got the shoulder strap or the neck strap of the camera wrapped up around one of the legs just to keep it from flapping around. If possible, go ahead and remove it so it's not, you know, shaking your camera in the wind or anything like that. By the way, this Joby tripod is great because it's got a ball head up here up top, so you can really just manipulate the angle very liberally. I've got the camera pointing straight up right now, and this is great for if you want to point at a particular star or a particular spot in the sky. So I really recommend kind of a ball joint here at the top. Okay, so real quick, here are a couple settings that you probably want to take care of before you get all set up. The first one applies only if you don't have a cable shutter release or an app or whatever. You can actually set your camera to not release the shutter until a second or two after you actually hit the button. So that's useful for mitigating camera shake. Also, just make sure you're in manual focus. You'll see why in a second. You see there I'm in manual mode to begin with. And then you'll notice that my ISO is very high. So I'm going to go in and set my exposure composition all the way down to -5. Cut down on that light because the moon is very bright, and now you see the ISO back to a reasonable, ideal 100 setting. Again, I apologize if the wind is pretty noisy, but the next thing you'll want to do is go ahead and point the camera at the moon. And you can use the viewfinder for this, or just use live view or whatever it's called on your camera. Basically have the back screen show a pretty close replica of what's being shown in the viewfinder. So find your subject and lock on. And at this point, I like to zoom in all the way and then just fine tune the position where it's aiming or where you're pointing, and try to get the subject as center frame as possible. Now from here, I hope your camera offers this option, but you want to zoom all the way in on the screen. So in this case, on my Nikon 5600, I can just push the plus magnifying glass button on the back like this. And very quickly zoom all the way in, and I'll usually frame the edge of the moon or one of those deep craters. They seem to work well in trying to find a clean focus. So leave the picture there, then use the focus ring on the lens to find a nice clean sweet spot. This screen makes it really easy. Here you can see the picture coming into focus a bit. Alright, so as I was saying, you want to zoom all the way into your subject on your camera, and then zoom all the way in on your rear screen. That way you can fine-tune your focus based on what the screen is showing. Otherwise, it's really tough to know if you've nailed the focus or not if your subject is so small in the viewfinder. So here's how I recommend you do it. Very easy. I should mention quite obviously that you want to be in as dark a place as possible, away from city lights, away from cars, street lights, any of that. I know it's tough to find the right conditions when you're in a big town like Tokyo and stuff, but you know, do your best. That's another great thing about being out here in the boonies like this. There's not a whole lot going on, so use that to your advantage if you're remote. Okay, it's not quite dark yet, but let's go ahead and fire one off. I've got the shutter at 1/800 f6.3 because that's the maximum aperture for this lens at this focal length. So let's go. All right, hard to see, so let's go into play here. Zoom all the way in and check it out. All right, looks pretty good. We can touch this up in post once I fire off a couple more. All right, we're back inside. You can see I've taken a number of shots, some obviously overexposed, some underexposed, and some seem to be spot on. Here's where I took a closer look. Usually these fringe areas, some of these craters will show details, some of them won't. So I'll usually go through some of the middle ground ones and pick out my favorite of the bunch. So for example, in this bunch, I think 395 seemed to be a pretty good one. This was shot at 1/800th of a second. Again, it seems to be a sweet spot shooting the moon. Some of the darker ones were, in the thousands, and some of the bright ones were like in the ones and 200ths of a second shutter speed. So I typically don't do anything in post at all. It's my goal to get as close to perfect in the field. I feel like to me that's what makes photography fun. But as far as these moonshots go, it can be fun to mess with some of the highlights and dark tones, black points, etc. Kind of increase or enhance the impact of the photo. You can even do some crazy things with colors like this, which I typically don't do. But yeah, so that's kind of it. Let me know how it went for you. If you have any questions, if you had any issues. Cheers.